Giving your business card to someone is very much like asking for a referral. Hello and welcome to your Consulting Business Podcast. My name is Russell Pearson and this is episode number 37. Now today we just have to talk about a topic which is close to the hearts of most consultants because it's two of the traditional ways that consultants get new clients. Now, one of those ways is referrals, and you've heard me talk about referrals all day long because while referrals are fantastic as evidence that you're doing good work or that people are willing to give you referrals for whatever reason, the problem with referrals is that they require someone else doing an activity before you have an opportunity, which means they can't be very proactive. Now, you can always ask for referrals, but do we want to be begging consultants or do we want to be advisors who are invited to take part in engagements? So referrals are one way, absolutely. The other way traditionally is networking. So today I want to talk about networking and how to network as a professional consultant. And I'll be giving you all sorts of tips and tricks on how you can put those in place. At the end of this session, I've actually got a book recommendation that I'll put forward as well, enabling you to read further on the topic. Now, why are these two ways in particular that people tend to build their consulting businesses? Well, number one, referrals means that you don't have to become a salesperson because someone else is doing the sales for you. I think you've got to get your head out of that space. We've talked about what sales is, and sales comes from the word solsa, which is a Norwegian word for inviting into the home. So if you understand that sales is all about inviting people across a threshold, inviting people to take a step, and if you also understand that that's a large part of the consulting journey when you're doing the work, then you will become a person who wants to be a solsa person, that wants to be a salesperson to invite people across thresholds. Now, put that to the side. We're not talking referrals today. We're talking about networking because networking gives us the opportunity to do what most consultants like to do, which is talk to another person professionally about what they have to offer. Now, I'm going to talk about networking. I'm going to show you some really great tips on how you can do it, but I want you to also understand there are hundreds of other ways to engage people in a consulting journey, to be the advisor, not the salesperson, not the sleaze person, not the person who is begging for work or even coming in as a service provider or even a contractor. We're talking about coming in at an advisory level, so you're invited to take part in engagements. There are hundreds of other ways to do that, and I'll show you more of those as we go through the podcast. I've already showed you a number of those before, but it's about creating a consistent pipeline of activity for your business. Now, any pipeline requires some form of connection to increase your network or to engage more networks in your world. So let's talk about networking. What is the purpose of networking? Well, the purpose of networking is to increase your circle of influence. Who are the people that you can engage with, have conversations with, or speak to on a daily or a weekly basis? How many people can we have the opportunity to speak to, and then how many people can we, open our opportunities to? So networking is all about increasing our network, and for some people, the network is the net worth. I know that there are all sorts of gurus out there talking about the value of a list, about increasing your list where your list is worth $1 a month to you or whatever it means. Or you might have 20,000 people on a list, therefore it's worth $20,000. Well, that number and that benchmark really comes from the small business e-commerce world. And while that might be true in their world, we're consultants, right? We're advisors, which means that there's a much higher ticket price for the work that we're doing. So each person on our network, put our list to the side because a list is just a bunch of contact details, but anyone that we can have influence around or have a conversation around or engage with in that professional conversation or that buying situation is enabling us to grow our net worth in a much larger way, and our net worth opportunity is what I'm talking about, because each engagement for us may be anything from $10,000 to $100,000, if not more. Right? So depending on the area that you're working in as far as a consultant, there is much bigger, higher ticket prices on the work that you're doing because you're an advisor and because you're a consultant who works on outcomes. We're not doing tasks for people. We're not even delivering services for people. That's service providers. We are advisors, therefore we are advising on outcomes, and which means that we are pacing and leading organisations and helping them take steps forward. Our outcomes are much larger than the prices we're charging, but they are so much larger that even if we're charging 1/10 or 1/20 of the price, the income that comes to us, or the value that comes to us as compensation, is still very, very high. Okay, so that's why we're doing it. We're doing it to increase our opportunities. But what is it? So the old days, networking was that you would go to a place, call it a networking event, and you would shake hands with people. And the more people you shook hands with, the more opportunities you would have. But the reality is, in those scenarios, let's say we go to an event with 100 people in it, we may only really speak to 5, 6 people, and we're probably only going to have maybe 2 or 3 really good conversations, which are enabling us to take our network offline or outside of that event to another opportunity. So how can we do it now to increase our effectiveness? Well, before we could go to an event, it might have been an hour or two, we meet with a few people, we increase our network that way. Now we have the opportunity with things like social media and other networking online, we actually have the opportunity to network on a 24-hour basis. Now, does that mean we're trying to make it efficient by just sending bulk email or bulk messages or bulk connections out to a whole hundreds and hundreds of people a day? No, we don't, because networking is about building relationships, and relationships is not about being efficient, it's about being effective. And so there's an effective way to build a relationship, and understand the relationship is not one way. Just because we've connected with a person does not mean we've created an effective or a positive relationship. And the way I can talk about this is, I remember back when I started my business, I went to a networking event that had maybe 100, 200 people in the room. And it was packed because everybody was in a sort of a waiting room as before they went into the main ballroom where they were going to have a breakfast at the time. And I remember looking at this sea of people who were all in this sort of smaller space, and it looked like the sea of people was starting to part. And as this parting sort of headed my way, I noticed that there was a little 5-foot guy who was walking through the crowd, passing his card out and just sort of passing it to people, being very efficient. And he's passing one person to the next, to the next, to the next. He walks past to me. He hands the card in my hand. I grab the card and I sort of have a look. But I don't take the time to pay attention to the card. I put it in the pocket where I keep my cards to discard. And I can tell you that when everyone moved into the ballroom, most of that guy's cards were all over the floor because it wasn't an appropriate moment to hand over a card. And I want to talk about cards and business cards as part of this discussion. So, how is being efficient actually getting in the way of being effective? Well, by trying to speed up the process, you've got an expectation on the process rather than engaging with someone to see if and how you should be forming a relationship. If you're going in with the expectation that this is a result, it's very much like the service offering. This is a thing I've got, do you want it? Rather than you coming in as an advisor, which is to audition people. Should this person be part of your network? Now, I've got a concept called the 120 list, which actually is this really nice little construct, which is I worked out years ago that for every person I spoke to and had, 5-minute reasonable conversation, that it was worth X amount of dollars to me, because for every 10 conversations, I would get a certain project at a certain size. And I worked out that if I spoke to 120 people, including my current customers, in a 90-day time frame, I would hit the goals that I needed to financially for that business. And so I started doing it, and it worked because that's how averages and maths work, right? It continued to work. Now, it fluxed over time, but the average held true. So I would call, after already speaking to clients and what have you, it meant I only needed to make about 6 to 7 calls a week to be speaking to these individuals. And in the process, I kept the relationship alive. Now, the 120 list is just an idea that you can have. You fill out a 120 list, people you want to stay in touch with, people who can refer you to others, people who are your current clients, your past clients, people who are mayors of the town, which if you haven't heard that concept before, it's people who have an influential position in the town of where your clients are. Now, am I talking about your suburb or zip code? No, I'm not. I'm saying that if you work in a specific niche, and I'll just use an example like bookkeepers. All right, I'm a consultant for bookkeepers. I'm not, but let's just say that I am. I do work with a couple of bookkeepers, actually. They're quite good to work with. But let's say that we're working with bookkeepers. We might go to the association and say, who's the association president, or the chair of the board, or the chair of the business group of bookkeepers. We introduce ourselves and create a relationship with that individual because they are a mayor of the town of bookkeepers. Now, the concept originally came from me moving to a specific town that's not too far from here, and I went to a networking event and met the mayor. Now, in meeting the mayor, I realised that mayors like to talk. Now, maybe that was just this guy, I don't know. But I started talking to the mayor. He wanted to know a bit about me because mayors in particular are good networkers. And he said, oh, well, you should go and speak to this person and you should speak to that person. He was telling me all these options for my business, including where I could hold events for free, who I should be speaking to have joint ventures and partnerships with. I thought, this is fascinating. You know, this guy's great. Every time I needed something, I'd go back and talk to the mayor. Anyway, mayors change hands, and he left the role, and then another person stepped into the role. And so I thought, I'll go and introduce myself to this mayor as well. And she was fantastic too. But she had a whole nother network of individuals that she started introducing me to. So every time I met a mayor, I was like, all right, fantastic. They're going to know what's going on in their community and know who to speak to. And so I thought, how can I take this concept a little bit further? And so I started looking at the different niches that I wanted to get into, like different sectors, different industries, and so what are the towns of those industries, the associations, the business groups, the discussion groups, the forums, and who is the mayor of each of those towns? And I started to develop this mayor of the town concept, which I now bring into my 120 list. And so that fills out a good part of my 120 list. And so these 120 people are a list that you'll speak to every 90 days, and you'll curate so that if someone becomes someone that you really don't want to continue a relationship with, you'll remove them and replace them with someone else. If someone either retires or passes away, because unfortunately that does happen over time, you'll curate it and you'll actually continue to nurture that list to ensure that you've got it always full of opportunities. So the 120 list is a really nice focus, but we're talking about having opportunities even outside of the 120 so that we can speak to whoever we want when we want. So what are some keys with networking? Well, number one, we're not just handing out business cards. The main piece you want to do with networking is understand you're here to build a relationship. And for you to build a relationship fast, people want to feel good about what's happening here. People want to feel good that they want to get into this relationship. And the relationships can be very professional. We're not talking about anything else. We're not talking about anything untoward. We're talking about that people want to hang around with people they like. All right? So if you're going to start a relationship through networking, the easiest way is to listen. So you meet someone at a networking event or even on social media, right? You can connect with them in all sorts of different ways. Ask them about them. Be curious. Be interested in them. Find out what's happening in their world. What's going on? What are they wanting out of things? And at some point, they will naturally return the favor and ask about you. Now, if this person in front of you is an ideal client, but it doesn't need to be, but let's say it is an ideal client, you can actually use a very, very simple phrase. Well, for people like you, this is who tend to have this problem, we create this outcome, and here's an example of how we've done it. It's a nice little elevator pitch that you can deliver to a person who is there in front of you. But you don't have to. You can just make friends with people. Everyone talks about rapport like it's some sort of I don't know, Machiavellian sort of puppeteer move or whatever it is. It's just make friends. It's so much easier to make friends than it is to manipulate people. All right? So listen to them. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in that capacity. We're listening to people, and then we're waiting for the invitation to introduce who we are and what we do. But be curious about people. There's a great statement about the need to feel heard, about how close it is to the actual feeling of love. And I can tell you right now, so many people feel unheard. So the conversation where they get to talk and you listen, like actively listen, is going to be one of the best conversations they're going to have all week. So that's certainly one way to do it. The other piece I would suggest too is stop giving business cards. I worked in the space of design. I worked in the space of advertising. And so for a lot of years, I was very much about the business card, making the business card important. It was important to have a good card because when you passed it over to someone, the feel that they got and the experience they got of handling your business card actually showed your value in this conversation, right? That's true. It's all very true. It's all part of brand. It's all part of impression and relationship building. But giving your business card to someone is very much like asking for a referral. It is now out of your hands what they do with that business card. They may give it to someone else. They may call you at some point. But it's far better to receive business cards. When you receive the business card, the relationship is in your control. Now you have the proactive opportunity to contact them outside of this event or this situation you're in and actually set up another conversation to chat. So there's just two very, very simple ways that you can look at networking. Number one, actually three. Number one, we're not going for efficient, we're going for effective. We're going to build a relationship. So what is the process of building a relationship with someone? Well, at the end of the day, it's just making friends. Number two is listen to people. Listen to what they've got to say. Be curious to learn more about them. Actually, I'm going to have another point that I'm going to give you before we end. Listen to them and let them feel heard, because then they will have reciprocity to ask you about you and your business, and they'll actually care. Take business cards, because I think that's absolutely important to be taking business cards. I'll have to come back to the other point. We're going to have to come back to another episode to actually understand what the other one was, because it's completely slipped my mind. But these tips are going to help you be more effective in the space of networking. So whether you're networking online or whether you're going out to networking events, you're going to be able to engage more people to increase your network and actually have more opportunities in your consulting business. Now to our recommendation. So I've got a book that I'd like to tell you about. It's The Complete Guide to Professional Networking. It's by Simon Phillips. Here is the book here. And you can get a copy by clicking on the link that we've actually got with the podcast notes and on YouTube with the YouTube notes. It's a really good book if you want to get deeper into the art and science of networking and actually use it to build a large part of your consulting practice. For those people who want to know more about networking, well, the easiest step is to get involved. If you want to start getting better at networking, go to networking events. I think if you look up in your sector, wherever you actually want to be engaging with clients or those who work with clients that you want to work with, you can find by a very, very simple search online where they are locally or where they are online. So I suggest you go and do that so that you can get really involved in that networking process that's going to help you in your consulting business. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. If you are listening to this with your listening ears on a podcast platform of your choice, you can also subscribe, but tell a friend, send it to someone. See if a colleague would find this as valuable as hopefully you found it. My name is Russell Pearson. Until next time, stay passionate, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.